be exploring the use of psychoactive substances in Mesoamerican cultures. We'll also be closely looking at archaeological, ethno-historical, and ethnographic perspectives and evidence to understand the importance of these substances. Firstly, I want to discuss some of the main examples of archaeological evidence that shows psychoactive substances played a large part in Meso and South American cultures before colonialism, as well as discuss the substances used and their chemical properties. I'd also like to discuss ways in which these substances were ingested, as well as a cultural example of the importance of these substances. So first, let's understand what evidence do we have that tell us that ancient civilizations harnessed psychoactive substances for religious, healing, and ceremonial practices. Thankfully, we have things like art, sculptures, and physical remains to tell us about ancient civilizations, and in this case, what psychoactive substances meant to them. One of the most renowned examples of archaeological evidence is for the use of psilocybin is the Guatemalan mushroom stones. These small structures, ranging a few inches to a few feet tall, were found throughout Guatemala and date as far back as 3000 BCE. Historians believe that these statues are associated with the ritual use of psilocybin mushrooms in Mayan religious ceremonies. It is thought that there were far more in the past, but Spaniards sought to destroy them because the use of mushrooms was against the beliefs of the church. The importance of psychoactive plants is from the Aztecs, specifically with the statue of Xochipilli. Also known as the god or prince of flowers, he represents health, pleasure, and happiness. He is depicted in this stone statue to be covered in ethnogenic plants, including mushroom caps, morning glory, and tobacco flowers, all in which have mind-altering effects. People also say his trance-like face can be interpreted as being in a state of spiritual ecstasy. More concrete evidence of psychoactive medicines is through the residual analysis of artifacts. Researchers were able to carbon date peyote cacti buttons, oliloquy, which is morning glory, seeds, and wild tobacco on grinding tools and pipes, some dating back over 5,000 years ago. These plants don't bring any nutritional benefit to one's diet, therefore it hints that they had a separate but still significant purpose in these civilizations. The photos of vessels shown here contain trace amounts of tobacco, which researchers believe was drank in a liquid form, unlike our modern way of ingesting it through smoke. Now that we've uncovered some archaeological evidence of substance use, I think it's important to look at the chemical compounds of certain substances, as well as how ancient people partook in their properties. First, and one of the most notable in Mesoamerica, is the mescaline cacti family. These include San Pedro, peyote, and Peruvian torch cacti. All of these cacti contain a compound called mescaline, known for its ability to place one in a dreamlike state. Native Americans and indigenous people throughout the Americas still partake in the use of mescaline cacti. Since peyote only grows in certain regions of Mexico, it is believed the Aztecs would receive dried cacti buttons through trade routes. Oliloquy, also known as morning glory, contains lysergic acid aminides, which contain mind-altering compounds. The seeds were typically crushed into a powder and then drank, and could make one easily nauseous. The Mayans were clever and consumed the honey of bees who pollinated the oliloquy flowers, which could have been to reduce the amount of nausea one feels. Ayahuasca from the Amazon rainforest is a psychedelic plant brew made from 2 different vining plants that contain DMT. One of the most depicted and transformative substances used in Mesoamerica is Teonanacatl, translated from Nahuatl to divine mushroom. The members of the Aztec upper class would often take Teonanacatl at festivals and other large gatherings, and they were often difficult to find. The Aztecs would drink chocolate and eat the mushrooms with honey, as they probably did not have a nice taste. Wild tobacco, similar to our modern farm tobacco, contains nicotine. It would be smoked or even drank by most Mesoamerican cultures. With wild tobacco, which the Maya called piziet, also played a part in sacred ceremonies. The Aztec had a stronger species of tobacco that contained far higher amounts of nicotine and were also used for ceremonial practices. Water lilies were revered in Mayan culture for their symbolism of purity and cleanliness, as they would only grow in clean lake water. They contained opiate alkaloids, which were only consumed by the Mayan elite to feel closer to the gods. I mentioned some practices and rituals for consuming psychoactive plants. However, I'd like to discuss an animal that was also revered for its medicinal and spiritual importance in Mesoamerican cultures, even today. This is the bufo toad, also known as the cane toad. The skin of the toad contains bufotoxins, but also a compound containing DMT, similar to ayahuasca. Historians found that they were used as early as the Olmec period, as the toads were often buried with priests, and there's also art around sacred places depicting these toads, like this one in Guatemala. The bufo toad ritual, still practiced today, involves milking the skin secretions off the toad and drying the slime. Once dried, it is smoked in a pipe and releases a heavy wave of hallucinogens from the DMT. We know this tradition was passed along to the Mayans and Aztec, but was later stopped during the colonial era. Here are Mayan bufo toad containers with the sun god mask on the back. These vessels could have contained dried bufo toad secretions, however, residual testing would have to be done to really find out. We've uncovered just how clear the use of psychoactive substances was in pre-conquest Mesoamerican societies. We can still see the use of these substances through the practice of shamans and healers today. Although psychoactive substances were ridiculed and banned by colonizers in Mesoamerica, centuries later it is starting to boom. According to Data Bridge market research, the psychedelic tourism market is thought to reach $10.7 billion by 2027. A quick Google search of any of the substances I listed earlier will bring you to a link to a retreat, ceremony, or healing journey in Mexico or Peru geared towards travelers looking for a getaway and a spiritual awakening. Even bufo toad rituals are advertised. Today, peyote cacti are still being aggressively poached and is currently on a list of species at risk of extinction in Mexico and the United States. Indigenous people who still value the sacredness of these plants are facing losing parts of their culture because of greed by psychedelic tourism industries marketed towards Westerners. All this being said, I believe it's important to recognize the history and hardships ancient people faced with protecting the sacredness of these plants, and how we must continue to protect them and value them today. Thank you.